I want to start this session with a question not for you guys, but for the audience, because I think that everybody who makes films, especially if they're starting off in shorts or music videos or commercials, dreams of making a feature. How many of you who are out there have thought about making a feature out of your short film or any short film? Yeah, okay. How many of you have ever made a feature? How many of you have got that feature distributed? Good, very good. You can see the diminishing numbers, right? Which shows you just how hard it is to go from making something to making something at scale, and then to, as was talked about in the last panel, making something that sells and is out there in the world. So I want to start with the question for the panel. But how does someone know that they are ready personally to take on the task of moving from, say, a short film that they shot in a weekend to the Herculean effort that is required to make a feature film? And anybody can jump in.
Jumping because you only have one mic.
Or you can shout, whatever you want to do.
I think it goes back to something that was mentioned earlier. It's obviously a relationship. So you obviously will need the knowledge and this great script that you've been working on developing all the characters, which again are paramount, coming from casting. No great actor is going to want to take on your film if the characters are amazing. We are hired to be telling stories, and we can just read a book, but we need great characters for it to be a film. That's something else out louder. But to that Herculean effort to actually make the film, oh, now I'm really loud. I think it's those relationships that you are building over the years, because you have to have a tribe and a team of people to work with. So I think it's really important to not be kind to people because you think they're going to do something for you, but just be kind because you should be kind to humans. And those people will appear and show up when you need them to show up. So relationships should be authentic and real and collaborative. Kimberly, I'm not speaking for all the Clubhouse people in the audience.
We'll flash on Yours is working. Mine is not. Okay. Anyway, now this one is. The truth is, you'll never be ready. You'll never be ready because it is very. I was about to swear. I understand we're not supposed to swear.
I'm usually the dream crusher, so I like this.
No, but the fact is, there's no moment where you're like, okay, I've ticked every box. There's no checklist. There's no moment where you're absolutely sure. You are throwing yourself into a void of risk, of rejection, of all the difficulties that this industry has to offer. So to consider yourself ready, it probably means you're really not, because it's a baptism of fire to really dive into producing a feature. It's again, this is an industry of rejection, so it's not just having a great screenplay, although without it you can't even start, but it is about how you're going to take this rejection going forward. That's going to be the testament of whether or not you're ready, whether or not you can actually push all the way through to delivering that film, because it is hurdle after hurdle after hurdle. Now, I don't mean to sound like I'm very negative, but the fact is, the moment you deal with the challenge ahead is the moment you're going to persist. And persistence and endurance are the ones who are the symbols of being ready. And obviously, the only way you find that out is through the process. So it's after you've started shooting, or after even you've started pitching it to people. The fact that you keep going means that's when you think you're ready. But to start, it's about believing in the story and being willing to walk through the wall for it. So when you translate from short to feature, you are trying to extend something that doesn't expand that easily. You've had a process of producing a few minutes worth of content, and it's not a proportional transfer into features. You just imagine that everything that was hard in shooting a short is going to be 10 times harder shooting a feature, because the undertaking, the stakes, and the stakeholders demand a lot more. So I'm done walking.
This is not working out. I'm being satisfied. I just want to jump in and say everything he said is correct. I liken it to having a baby. when are you going to be ready to have your first child? When?
Never.
You're never going to be ready. It's a matter of faith and belief in the cosmos. You know, you have to just go for it. That's when you're ready. You have to just believe in it so much that you believe that things will fall into place. And they do, because when you believe in something enough, you know, the universe will conspire to make it happen for you if it's meant to be. And you just have to, I mean, it sounds all touchy-feely, but a lot of this business is that way.
Not too much.
Yeah, well, maybe not.
Yeah, if you look to the left and the right and other people are also first timers, you need other people in the room. You need someone that's gone through the process. Like, that's the biggest lesson I learned. Like, when I first started, and I studied accounting, I was a CPA, I was an accountant, and I quit corporate America when I was 29. But previously, about 5 years, I did production, finance, and accounting at Warner Brothers. So first film set I ever set foot on was Batman Begins. In London, Superman Returns, Australia, View from Vendetta, Germany. Never did I think, and I know I did this on my first intro, an Indian from Indiana is allowed to do films. And you don't, thinking that if you don't live in New York or LA or have rich parents that you can do this. And I was scared, so I didn't start till I was 29, and a friend of mine said, give yourself 7 to 10 years to feel like you're heading in the right direction. Not make it, but feel like you're heading in the right direction. And I was 29. I was like, that's too long. I'm going to be 40 with it, you know? I'm 43 now. I know I look young, but...
I have an actor friend, and I was an actor once upon a time in LA too, and I was at a theater, and I was like 26, and he was 40, and I thought he was ancient. And I said to him after the show, I thought he was really good. He was a really good actor. It was strange to me why he hadn't made it yet. And I said, his name was Will. I still remember his name, Will. I said, how long are you going to give it, Will? You know, you're 40. How long are you going to give this? He says, well, when I came to Hollywood, I said to myself, if I don't make it after 10 years, I'm just going to have to go give it another 10 years. You know, that's I always remember that as a beautiful thing to make it. It still gives me chills to think about it. You don't have to be committed to doing what you're doing, believe it.
It's Will Smith, actually. Well, on the 7 to 10 years, like 4 years in, I made my 4th film. It got into Sundance 2013, The Lifeguard with Kristen Bell. So I was like, see, I knew it wouldn't take 7 to 10 years. I was literally the top of the mountain in Park City. But, and it's the next panel, and they'll talk about it more, the distribution game, and that's a whole other game. And we had a hard time finding a sale, and I had to re-engineer the types of films I was making. And so talking about 7 to 10 years, my 10th film, my 10th year, sold for $10 million at Sundance, Assassination Nation, and it was like, I didn't get any of that, but they went on to make Euphoria, didn't take me. And 13 years in, I got a job as head of film. So former CPA, accountant, I know I've said it before, Indian from Indiana, and it's like the reason I love coming to things like this is you can be outside of the system, but it's work, and it's playing the long game, all day, every day.
I mean, the main thing is, I love what you're saying about the fact that coming from outside the system. I started out by starting a production company in London. We were doing commercials. We were pitching out video services. And, from video to film, it's kind of. If you look at it, and you feel really completely in a different dimension. But we started off with documentaries. The good thing about documentaries is that it's very feasible without having to run through too many hoops. You just pick up cameras and head to get talking heads. We started with shorts, we turned into features. We did arguably one of the largest music documentary of the last 10 years for Late to Late. And we premiered it at South by, and at that moment it was like, I am not effing going back to video. I am not. And so my company, which is called became Films. And I moved to LA, and I decided, I'm not touching marketing again, unless they pay me a lot of money, and that's the other part. But and so after that, with that determination to shift everything towards films, I decided that I couldn't do documentaries anymore, and I decided to write. And my wife, my wonderful wife, told me, you need to do horror. You love horror. Your whole life has been about horror. So why don't you just, and I got into it, and it's kind of you're imposing your will on the universe, and it's you know, you're gonna, nobody wants your will anywhere near the universe. And nobody, and that story and that character and that thing that you're like so convinced about, you're shoving it into people's face, trying to sell it, pitch it, get it off the ground. You're starting off understanding that they are looking for a reason to tell you no. So you're not upselling, you're literally trying to break that no that they have so often ready. And this is where determination comes in. And this is where you give yourself timelines, and then as your actor friend said, you give yourself 10 years before you give yourself a further 10 years, before you give yourself an extra 10 years, and then you die. That's what just...
That is the plan.
So just
You guys are literally.
yeah. Well, I'm in my 40s. I've shifted my career so many times now that my head is spinning, and even my kids don't know what I do. So, but just again, remember, whatever you're seeing in your head, and we touched upon it on the previous panel, whatever you see in your script, in the team, in the amazing specialists you surround yourself with, whoever you talk to, they don't see it because they know better. And the only way you're gonna change their mind is, first of all, don't apologize for what you're bringing to them. In marketing, we always pitch by saying, I appreciate it's really expensive, it's for this, it's for that. We give them a reason not to say no. Here, just only focus on them saying yes, even though they'll keep saying no until somebody says yes. Does that make sense? Yes. And so that's imposing your will on this crazy thing.
Well, and I think
You're only, I'm sorry, I just want to say you're only involved in the two most profitable genres, that are horror's number one, documentaries number two. Did anybody know that? Documentaries number two. Crazy.
But I think just to capitalize all of that, it's about show up and follow up. So you just have to, you're showing up, so you made the first step, and just continue to show up and follow up. If it's showing up to writing workshops, showing up production workshops, showing up and meeting people who can help you level up. So as long as you show up and follow up. Don't assume that somebody didn't get your email. Assume that they were too busy and you're just following them.
Assume they ignored it.
In sales, they say if you don't get a call back, you never made the call.
If it's not a yes, it's a no. And when you get those maybe or we'll get back to you or things like that, it's a no.
In Hollywood, even if it's a yes, it's a no. Loved it, baby, loved it.
I'll give you just one last trick, and I'm sorry, I don't want to monopolize too much of the thing, but I'm just going to say, your project needs to fit in one sentence. Because that's as much attention as you're going to get. If you walk around Cannes or any film market and you have a project in development, understand that whoever you're speaking to, they'll give you less attention than a 3-year-old. And so when I did with Sound of Violence, I went around Cannes saying, this is the story of a killer who makes music through love. Immediately, yes, no, not interested, one sentence. Because then you immediately gauge where you are and you don't waste time. A quick no is more valuable than a maybe that you're holding hopes onto.
What you're saying is know your long line, right? 25 words or less.
In a pitch sense, yes. But just I generally say one sentence is. It helps you as well because you need to know your project. You need to understand that your project, if it's not that one sentence and it's all those extra things you feel you need to say, then it's not focused enough. And this is why short film help you, because writing a short film forces you to be very focused on a single idea. So that's what you transfer into feature, single-mindedness, and you don't. And this, of course, there's a million more things you'd like to tell.
Right.
But that one thing.
So that actually leads really well into the next talking point that I'd like for you guys to discuss, which is how to know if, say, these folks have made short films, and I'm sure that many of them have said, I want to make this story a feature. How do they go about the process of determining whether or not they have, if that story is suitable for feature length or how are they able to build that world, or know if they can build a world out of what they've done? Does it make sense as a feature? Can it be expanded in a way that makes sense? How do they know?
You didn't get to speak last time. Your go.
Well, I think it goes back to what you heard earlier. I mean, if these characters aren't interesting enough that I want to watch them for 90 minutes after I watch them for 10 or 12, that, I mean, it goes back to the story. So I think you really have to be tuned into your story and the characters and make sure it's a journey that becomes a universal theme as well that people can, like, tap into. And although it could be a genre piece, or it could be, about older women or, 18-year-old boys, we all as humans experience stories, so I think it really needs to be very much about the emotional and psychological state of your character, so that anybody can tap into it regardless of what age or race or gender some of these characters are. And again, that's just a personal opinion.
I don't know, I hate to be contrarian, but I think we have to think about these as two different art forms, really. The short film is its own art form, the feature is its own art form. So you can't be like taking the short and expanding it into a feature. I don't know, maybe that works, but I believe if you have compelling characters, make a feature. You have a chance of making some money. Short films are, you spend so much time and effort. I have all kinds of friends that my son just made a short film. He made a series of them, but I kept encouraging him to make a feature, and he finally made a feature, and he said, you're right. It's almost as much work to make a short as it is a feature. I should have made a feature. I could have made 4 features by now. Every feature...
You do have to know the story, though. I mean, if you can tell the story in a short film, then don't try to make it a 90-minute feature. I mean, that's just futile and ridiculous, because it wasn't, so know your story.
If you love your characters and you can make it a feature, just make it into a feature.
Okay, I need to interject. Welcome to the horror world, where we have a great pipeline of turning shorts into feature. Perhaps it's one of the genres where it's the most suitable to turn a short into a feature. Drama is difficult, comedy is difficult. If you're going to turn any short into a feature, the good thing with horror is that we tend to have a proof of concept at the core of it. Now, the reason why you make that short is generally a question of resources. But the transfer of it is, selling a movie with a proof of concept short in horror helps a hell of a lot. Conductor, the short that inspired Sound of Violence, I mean, always there. Again, I said about the one sentence. That one sentence got them to watch the short. Then, of course, you need a script. You need to have
Would a trailer not have done it though?
You know what? This is the great thing. If you're a skilled storyteller and you know how to make a value of every minute that you put on the screen, this is where short film is an art form. Making too many short films. This is where I am. Then also agreeing with you is making too many short films is a waste of your time. When I was in the transfer from documentary to horror, I decided to do that short, and it was from my lawyer to my publicist saying, make one short film, make it as good as you can, and then all your inner doubts about shifting from producer to director, all those things that inhabit you, it's there. It's your proof of concept, yes, but it's also okay. You've done this. If you start making too many shorts without purpose, you end up being a short film director or producer. And I don't mean that, and I mean that with the greatest of love, because I love the short format, but it's not commercially viable avenue.
That's all not commercially viable, usually.
Yeah, but at the same time, with a good short, when let's say you have $5,000, you don't have $100,000 available like this. You can put together $5,000. You can do a great short for $5,000. And as was said earlier, use what you know. You know what? I have a car and a bicycle, and I'm going to create a story out of that. And pull all the favors you can. Short films do that. Putting favors in features is difficult because it's a feature. It has a bigger undertaking. So when you do that short and you use the resources you have, the little money, the little locations, the little people, everything the little resources you have to put them into a short that then you tour in festivals. Because just making a short and putting it on YouTube is, the main point is to be able to go and put it in front of audiences and see their reaction. Being accepted into festivals means that as well you've got to be promoted on the whole slate of that festival. That's when you put yourself in the universe. Again, what I said earlier, imposing your will into the universe, That's where you start. You put a short that gets selected in a few things, and you get, the laurels mean nothing, the awards mean nothing, but the people seeing you, that means everything.
And that's
Also,
why
if you have $5,000, make a feature. Remember,
Make a feature for 5,000.
did anybody ever hear of Robert Rodriguez? Anybody ever hear that guy? He made a movie, I think back then it was $7,500. Okay, so
I think inflation,
$7,500.
we're talking.
So he had a guitar, he had a bus, he had access to his grandmother's house in Mexico. He made a killer, unbelievable feature film that was changed a bit. He made another film was made out of it, which made $400 million or something like the Widow International. So, you know, I mean,
But to that point, it's not a good business model. I mean, you can barely get into great
you can do it. I mean, if you're going to be a dreamer anyway, dream big, right? I think you can still.
The chances of it working, are
He
you?
made it on film too. He shot on film, by the way. You know, now it would take, I think, less than $7,500 to make that film. Anyway, I'm not discounting what you're saying at all. I'm just saying that if you have a feature idea in mind, you believe you can. Listen, I love the short film format. There are short films I remember. I've gone to hundreds of film festivals, by the way, and I meant to say this up front, but this is one of the most well-run festivals I've ever been to. This is a great festival. And it's been such a pleasure meeting so many of you guys through the Movie Maker Production Services meetings that we've had. I know almost all of you now, and you're just, you know, it brings tears to my eyes, all the hopes and ambitions you guys have, and I know you're going to carry them out because you've already been vetted by this festival. The fact that you're here means you're going to succeed. So that's fantastic. But yeah, where was it going with this? I believe that. I do believe that getting your resources together, if you can make a feature film, is the way. Oh, I know what I was going to say. That's going to lots of festivals, seeing lots of short films. There's some that stick with you forever. There was a 4-minute film I remember seeing 20 years ago called The Virgin of the Angels. There was no dialogue, 4 minutes about this kid remembering child molestation. But you know, it was incredible, told with music and kind of soft focus and great acting. Never forget it. It's its own art form, a short film. And you guys have pulled those off, and it's amazing. But if you want to be commercially viable, probably shoot for your next one to be a
If you
feature
have
film.
$500, use it to prepare your marketing package and towards that film market. Don't try to make a feature for $7,500. It happened, yes. You can throw, you know what, I could cover my eyes, throw a dot, and it would land exactly where everything happened and miracles happened. Generally, the rules of it, 99.9% out of the time, $7,500 will not give you a feature. But with $7,500 at the development fund, you do your marketing package, and you go and you travel, and you go to film markets, and you meet people, and you build your network. That will be, you will turn those dollars into real value. Because, you know, we hear those stories. I mean, Blair Witch was shot for 20 grand.
Yeah,
Great.
and those stories are lighting your body. I mean,
Exactly.
you can't base your film career on those two stories. It's just not a good business model. Based on story, development, and getting out and selling your and getting pitch packages together. And yes, go find investors on a really great pitch package, great strategy.
Yeah. And we'll get questions in just a
Oh,
minute.
okay, sorry.
But I do want to, this is a great opportunity to go back to something that Milan was talking about earlier, which is putting together a team that's going to help you make this happen. Let's say that you've moved through what we discussed in that first panel and you've got a story that you really love and it works. No notes, everybody came back and said it's amazing, it's the next thing. But how do you go about building that team that's going to help you bring this production to reality? And there's a difference between, and look, I've been there too, where it's like, hey, mom, you hold the boom, dog, you sit there, and don't do anything, and we can get through this together. But when you're talking about putting a feature together, there's, you know, it was mentioned, there's a lot on the line. You're talking about investors, probably. You're talking about weeks of people's time at the very least. It's not a weekend thing usually. How do you go about deciding who should be on your team to make that production happen? How do you surround yourself with people that are going to make it happen on time, on budget, and all those things? Starting from scratch, like that you...
Yeah, I think the more you help others, the more you know, if you're helping other people, you can start seeing who's good at what they do. I mean, you've never, like, build a car with the way we put film teams together. Like, it wouldn't run, it wouldn't work. Yeah, but like, a lot of times you find out, oh, they can't do their job when it's too late. But the more you help others and being a part of a supportive part of the ecosystem, and things like this, the film festival circuit is good. You know, IMDb, you know, like who's making the kind of films you want to make, and you know, the executive producers are listed on there too, and I mean, from costume design, production design, all those things, and you know, I think finding those people through the circuit and helping others is the best way to help yourself.
But I think a practical place to start is to work on a big movie. So this is great. You were at the top of the food chain in your short film, but just because you were producing a short film, and again, nothing against it, I produce them too, and I produce features. But when you get up to a studio feature, you have investors, you're probably not going to be dealing with SAG actors. You might have actually opted in a script from a writer field member, and if you have SAG actors, you really want to have a DGA, UPM, and First AD. Those are all unions, and they have rules and regulations, so there's a lot to learn. So there's nothing wrong with starting out at the bottom. So you were at the top of the food chain on your film, but go to a big, huge feature film and be a production assistant. And you're going to start to see how the machine works. The more you know about how the machine works, from being the tiniest cog in that wheel to understand how you make a film, that's where you're going to actually learn something. So it is not a bad idea to start and do that. I mean, you hear about the stories of people start in the mailroom. So be a production assistant. If you're an actor, you'll have people who are going to poo-poo background work. Absolutely not. And if you can be a stand-in, you are spending more time with the director of a huge movie and the DP of that film than the actual stars themselves. You're doing all the flocking, you're there the whole time, you're getting to see them talk to the gaffer. You literally get paid to sit around and watch a movie run.
And people remember good PAs. Like,
Oh,
like,
100%.
We all remember good PAs. And the thing is, like, you can't decide that, like, okay, now I'm a producer. Okay, what are you producing? It's one of those things where it's living on a set gives you a sense of being part of a set, being part of a film, understanding how it works, understanding, preventing yourself from future mistakes. You can't just decide, that's it, I'm a producer, that's it, I'm a director, that's it, again, we want to, and I'm kind of contradicting the point I was making earlier about imposing your will into the world, but the fact is, it's also, the good thing about imposing your will into the world is also waiting till it's the right time to impose your will into the world, and meanwhile, you want to learn as much as you can. I didn't go to film school. So,
I didn't either.
Yeah, there's no formality about having gone to film school. This is what we're in an industry where it's not a necessity to have gone to film school. In fact, arguably, many of the best filmmakers never went to film school because they break all the rules, because they don't care about the rules. As Quentin Tarantino said, I didn't go to film school, I went to films. And the fact is, all this learning by watching, reading, showing up on set, even making, when we had our production company, I was the managing director of the company, I still made tea on set. Because you know what, I needed to be on set, and I just couldn't just sit there and wait for things to happen. The more active you are on set, the more memorable you are to people, this is the start of your networking. Before you have any budget to travel and show up to places, this is where you do impose your will into the world by them remembering you because you were a wonderful hero.
It's an apprenticeship business. You have to apprentice under amazing people. So that's how you become good at it, because you start to see what all these amazing people do, and then you create your own artistic vision out of all that. But you have to see it to be it. So again, I didn't start directing for years because huge movies. When you meet Jim Cameron, Oliver Stone, Alan Pakula, I didn't think at 25 years old I could be a director, but I sat and watched those amazing directors for decades. And then I was like, I can do this, but you have to go out and observe it. You can't just sit at home and think you can go make a movie tomorrow if you have not done it and watch other people do it again and again. So it's like rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat.
But I think that's true. That's all true, but it depends what you want to do. If you want to work on big Hollywood movies, that's the way to do it. But I think there are a lot of ways to skin the cat, and you can learn how to make movies by going and working on your friends' movies, working on independent movies, working on movies that you don't necessarily want to be a PA. You have your own projects. You're a writer. By the way, what's the definition of a producer in Hollywood?
Rainmakers.
Someone who knows a writer.
Right,
So they're lighter.
but I will disagree with you that if you never go see that film and you don't see where the bar should be, how can you ever, even if you don't have a studio system, you have to know what the bar is for quality that you're going to sell.
But you can
And
see
yes, there
movies,
may
like
be
you said,
vegetables.
he went to movies. Quentin Tarantino, didn't go to film school, he went to
Yeah,
film.
but you can watch
see
an
it that
Academy
way.
Award-winning Oscar designing, costume designer, production designer, but until you were in their office and you saw them on set and you saw them work, and then it's important to them that the pen is this way, when you see that and you understand it, then you make it happen.
I never went through the studio system. I was always in the part. With again, it's also good to just again, when I said set, it's any set. It doesn't have to be a massive set. If you have the opportunity to just be a fly on the wall on a massive set, yes, please just take that opportunity. Even if all your only job is to make sure the director has always a bottle of water next to him, who cares? That's just be there. But in the indie world, any set is a learning environment. And the fact is, for those who are directors, remember that you're working on set as the least qualified person on set. And it's a fact, because everybody around you, they go from job to job. Cinematographers, the whole camera team, the whole G&E team, your set designer, they go from job to job. They work much more than you do. So arriving with that and starting to appreciate the craft of everybody around makes you a better director, I think, because you're not trying to ever step on their toes, and you're just trying to bring all those amazing people that you revolve around to help your vision. As a producer, the trick is to also know how to identify specialists and how to channel your director to be focused on performance, and then to make sure the whole team around the director makes up for all the lack of skills the director has.
Well, I was talking earlier about building cars. I think that's a perfect example. They say that Henry Ford had no idea how to build a car. His whole life, he had no idea how to build a car. But he knew the right people who knew each part of the process. So as a producer, and I was being glib, of course the producer knows more things than just a writer. But what the producer chiefly knows how to do is identify good people, people who are good at their craft. And if you can find a great cinematographer, if you can find a great first AD, don't discount the value of a first AD on your set. The first AD will save you so many times. But if you can identify great department heads they know all the great people underneath them. You need to have a very small group of people. That's chiefly what a short film is good for, developing your team. My son, just made a film in April, a feature film in LA. I went out there and sat on set for a few days. I was so proud of him. But that's what he learned. He got some friends of his, some people who knew other people, came on the set, and everyone worked out except the sound guy. The sound guy was a dick. So he could take that whole team to his next project except the sound guy. But now he knows his team. These people would go to battle for him anytime. They had a great experience. But building your team is huge. You can do that on short film.
So we're getting close to having just maybe 2 questions left, and then we'll do some audience bits, just so we can get back on the schedule. I want to talk a little bit about investing or financing as you are going down the path of having a feature. Let's assume that you're doing it as an independent filmmaker, and you're having to go around and find financing. We can all certainly wax poetic about the stress of gap financing in your post-production process or what have you, but when you're going through and finding that funding, what should you be looking for? What are the green flags and red flags when you're looking at financing? I've had friends who have made feature films with money that they should never have touched because it was worth a whole lot.
Don't take it from your family. Do not take money from your family. I'm sorry. Too many people do that. Even your friends, it's kind of a bad idea. Yeah. So that's where I would start. Don't take it from your friends and family. They have unrealistic expectations. They look at you differently at family meetings.
Tell them they're going to lose it. So just so that we're clear, they're very, very likely to never see anything.
Yeah, that's true. You say that going in, but they don't believe. They think that you're going to be, big thing. They're going to, they're going to make a
My
lot.
mom is very
No, well, your mom. Yeah, my mom, your mom. But okay, other than your mom, don't take money from your family friends. What they used to say, call dentist, right? Is that still the thing?
Yeah.
Call
Dentists,
dentist.
they still
Yeah. Dentists are wealthy and bored. Bored silly. Everybody hates them. So they want to get involved in the film industry. They all want to be producers.
By the way, if you see the energy of this panel, this is.
We're not jaded at all.
This is producer 101. It's just like everybody's up is trying to be the alpha here. And it's like, this is.
So I'm gonna be the total outlier.
That attitude that you have, these are the people with this sort of slight arrogance that we all seem to have is actually, these are the people you need to convince to give you money. And the fact is that, again, with that arrogance, they have a reason to say no, to reject you, because this is what this industry is built on. So the money, as far as the question about which money you need to look out for, is one, understand that whether or not they have invested in films before, meaning that they are actually savvy into the investment, understand the undertaking, the paperwork that you have to give them. So negotiations go for a while, but then you do give them that paperwork, and that paperwork has obviously a production agreement, it has a stakeholding agreement, which is your financial, and then there's a statement of risk, which is essentially telling you this is the worst idea you've ever had to put money into.
It says that.
It's a legal document. It literally, in very, very fancy language, tells you, don't do this, your money's gone, it's stealing.
But you might get to a movie and see it on the red carpet.
That's the thing. So understand what they're trying to do. So you need to make sure that you're very upfront about that with your future financiers, especially when they have never invested in a movie like this. But if they have, they're ready for that. Then understand what their interest is. Are they in it for a tax write-off? Very important to be aware that production money is Division
181.
181.
168K, 181.
Sorry.
The new one is 168K.
160. So the point is are they willing to write it off? Because in the timeline that you take their money until the movie's out, it's like you have 2 to 3 years sometimes before you have any return to consider. So meanwhile, they write off that investment against their taxes, and if they're very wealthy, it's like that's what their number one incentive is. Then, if they are otherwise interested in the IP, then this is when you might want to watch what their end game with it is, because
I'm
it's
just going to jump in for 1 second, because a lot of people have mentioned IP today, so in case you don't know, because sometimes people don't know, it's intellectual property. But nobody actually said it was out loud today, right? So
I thought it was it the whole time.
but so just understand their undertaking. If it's a fund, if it's a private person, if it's or if
Be
it's
a co-production with somebody,
Yeah.
that you have some long-term relationship.
and then also make sure it's not money laundering.
Yeah, you gotta protect the ecosystem. Just because you can raise money doesn't mean you should. Like 60 to 70% of my films over the last 5 years have sold for MG's higher minimum guarantee of higher than the budget, and that's not by accident. My films are profitable not because they made tons of money; they made enough money. And finding that balance, and that starts with the writing. Well, you find different ways to get the theme of your story across without the big party seeing the big sequence, and you learn, because independent film is not a competitive sport. I want you all to succeed. For me to win doesn't mean you to lose. And protecting that ecosystem and being responsible and playing the long game, as you're saying, listening. One of the greatest exercises is listening to these people, these high net worth individuals that have made money in whatever they do. What are they into? And I kind of put people in buckets. The ROI that are trying to make money. So, we're taking advantage of tax write-offs. We're taking advantage of state tax incentives. It's like, even if this thing makes zero, you're gonna get 60-70% of your money back. And then there's the ROE, return on experience. That's the red carpet, or they care about a cause. And listening, I've had more investors come to me, like, because I didn't ask those close people those first few years, and they're like, once I made my first Sundance film, they're like, how come you haven't asked me for money? And I was like, do you want to? And it was that discipline, because I would have taken $25,000 from them. Today, I'll be giving up $1 million 5 years from now, and
So that's brilliant. It's huge.
and look, I love things like Seed and Spark, and Seed and Spark is, I think the Kickstarter Indiegogo is dead for indie film, but Seed and Spark is about community. And now there's things like WeFunder, and so on, when you do the crowdfunding, like, don't do T-shirts, because that costs money and logistics. But Seed and Spark is about community, and it's building up people together and people that believe in what you're doing, and it's a great.
It's part of the own estate, right?
No, the WeFunder is equity, because they changed the laws like 2-3 years ago, and I just put one through WeFunder, and we got $150,000, and it's like they have equity,
That's the point, is I know for a long time it was, so for a while, to get equity to a movie, you needed to be a qualified investor, meaning you needed to have a net worth of 1 million plus, and you needed to be able to essentially tick a few boxes. Otherwise, essentially, you were not allowed to invest in stake, and so that's why all those crowdfunding platforms where essentially you were putting various levels to get, as you said, a T-shirt or an access to a visit or whatever, but you never had equity, so no potential return on investment. But also, is everybody familiar with soft money?
The what?
So soft money is essentially, it's in essence, it's free money, but it's very hard to get. It means that these are all the incentives that you can get in various states. So where you shoot, you have an ability to get money back. So it's either a tax rebate or a cash rebate. Sometimes they're grants. Sometimes they take all those checks. And so these are the part of your budget that you go and benefit from incentives from. Now, there's two things. It's always important to have soft money in your budget, because this is not money that needs to be paid back. This is an investor going to pay back. So your other investors are happy to know that 25% of your budget are, for example, covered by soft money. One of the biggest mistakes you do is qualifying that soft money as money that you've raised already, meaning that you say, I've already got 30% of my budget. And then they ask you, all right, where is it from? Oh, we have the tax incentives from Louisiana. We're shooting in upstate New York, so we have a 30% production incentive. And you go to your investors and say, I've already got 40% of my budget. That's a lie. You don't, because unless you have the rest of it. So making a plan that clearly divides between private money, potential loans, and soft money is very important, because when you arrive to an investor, you need to have to figure it out, because preparedness is what's going to turn that no into a yes. And the fact that if you arrive in front of an investor and you have no idea how you're going to raise the rest or how the makeup of your budget is, I don't think any investor doesn't, any investor who, unless they really are point of view because they're your friends or family, most investors will say no, because they feel that you haven't figured that out. How to benefit out of all those incentives, all those things that also mitigate. So, and this is the very important expression, to mitigate their risk. And mitigating their risk is, for example, the soft money that covers a part of the budget that doesn't need to be recouped. And so that is important. Also, very much limiting your bets on it. Boring to make movies is generally a pretty bad idea, unless it is you're borrowing against your soft money, meaning that you know that you're going to get that rebate, so you borrow ahead for it, or you have valuable actors and you have estimated MGs on actors, and in which case you can borrow against that. But yes, all I'm saying is that it is very important to have a financial plan that actually makes the most out of every money that you can get that you don't have to pay back.
I was gonna say also have some skin in the game too. We all have expenses in our lives, whether it's your car or whatever you think is important in your life. So investors like to know that you have $10,000 or $25,000 or whatever, you've saved it, you've earned it, you've put it aside, and that's your stake. So it's better to go to an investor saying, I've raised this much already on my own, rather than, I have zero, but I need money from you. It's the same thing as putting your salary in your budget. You don't do that just starting out as a producer. You don't put, I wrote the script, so I get $25,000 for the script. I'm the producer, so I get $50,000 as producer. Neophyte, folks, independent filmmakers will do that on their first budget, but don't do that. Investors hate to see that. So that's an important thing to remember. Not in your first one anyway. Later, pay yourself, absolutely. But I do think having that initial stake of cash shows that you do have skin in the game, you're serious, and then you can go to, you get your soft money after that. That's an excellent idea. Movie maker production services started because it's difficult to make those movies for $7,500. It's really hard. You can do it, but again, it's very, very hard. A minimum amount might be $50,000, So if you can come up with 25, we have matching funds which we can bring it up to 50. So that's, finding soft money is important. In programs like MMPS, that's why we started, just to get up to that viable level. Now you can review me.
Sorry, actually know your worth. Absolutely budget yourself, your time, your value in there. Absolutely tell your investor that your time is worth that money. Do not shortchange yourself. You need to live. You need to be able to eat. You need to be able to go through your set.
On your second film.
But it just shouldn't be top-heavy. I think the point is you should pay yourself, but not too much, so that it looks like you're exhausting the budget.
Pay everybody in your crew though. Make sure everybody gets paid on your crew.
And make sure that you get paid too. And there's a reasonable amount for your position. If you budget, here's $100,000 for me. Yeah, people are going to say you're an idiot. But if you arrive and you make sure that a 20-day shoot pays you, let's say, 10 grand, it's not unreasonable. And the fact is your investors will absolutely respect the fact that you are budgeted in there, that your job into that project is set. And if you can't justify your value to an investor, then you're doing something wrong. You didn't work out your project right, because I refuse to hear that somebody can go on a project and do it for free. On shorts, we all work as much for free, but if it's a feature and everybody on set gets paid and you need to budget yourself in.
You're going to make money when the project makes money.
But
you're going to make money later on the other end.
All right.
I think to dial it back to our question, which was if you were getting started and you were actually going to get the funds, I think you need to be very cognizant, because we did start with screenwriting for a very good reason, that if you want, you should be profitable. Your goal on your first film should be profitability. And you have to then think about the genre. So while again, I'm not a big horror person, horror makes money. So you have to look at that. So what genre can I make? Do not do a huge period film with lots of stuff going on. If it's your first film out of the gates, who's giving you money for that? So you need to show a track record of experience and being profitable, so then you continue to scale up through that. Make your epic, Lawrence of Arabia after you have made a few things and you're profitable. So I think that's an important place to get started, to bring it back to you.
Great.
Actually, there's one part of the question that we didn't cover, which are scams.
Just really quick, like 20 seconds, because I think we're over time.
They were over time.
We are now 3 minutes past an hour from when they started. So yes, you want to throw it in there, please do.
No, I just wanted to say, watch out for scams. There are actually genuine scams out there who are preying on emerging filmmakers with promises of fully funding the project, and behind that, their agreements are, for example, fully controlling your IP. You can't, hand over the copyright, because copyright law doesn't work like that. But they're signing on to almost be able to then do whatever they want with it. But then also there are genuine scams where, for example, they will ask you to raise 20% of your budget cash, And they say, once you've done that, we'll bring you the rest of it. And the point is that they want to pre-sign productions agreement, and you have the money in the account, and all of a sudden they are party to that money. And all of a sudden there are a whole bunch of ways they get swindled into putting the money into an account that is whatever. So whatever you do, if you end up with setups asking you to raise an amount of money beforehand, just say that you will put that money into escrow, and that it will not be released until the rest of the money is there too. Because this is otherwise there are so many ways, and I'm not I don't know all the details about what, but the one thing is my lawyer always said, escrow the money and put one release, which is that the other rest of it has to be brought to you.
Have a good lawyer too.
Lawyer. I was gonna say lawyer.
There are great independent film lawyers out there who know that if they start working with you, they're going to get paid a lot on your next movie. So don't be afraid to go to people like David Pierce in Beverly Hills. People like the top people in the top lawyers in the independent film industry will still take your phone call because they know that they shouldn't be shutting off a potential relationship that's going to make them money later on. Not because they're so altruistic, but because they're looking out for themselves 2 years, 5 years from now.
Show up to their panels. A lot of talented lawyers do panels and many festivals and many things.
They teach UCLA extension.
So show up to those and then meet them there, because sometimes it's hard to call them and they will not pick up or whatever because they're very, very busy. But the fact is, like, if they do have a talk, and you just muster the courage to walk up to them and just say, "Hi, I'm at the bottom of the food chain, but I'm about to do a big movie. I need your help." They'll be like, "Okay, you might get a junior to help you," but the fact is, it's better to start asking from the top lawyers to help you than some of as well. That's another scandal. There are also terrible lawyers out there.
Good lawyers will save you a lot, way more money than they cost.
So yeah, show up and follow up with attorneys as well.
Okay, so we have time for just a few questions here. Jay, you were asking something earlier.
Yes. Hello, I'm Jaya Sharma.
And you directed.
Oh, and
Or, I'm sorry,
I wrote Not a Kid Down.
Yes.
And Jacob, my husband, directed. So when y'all were talking about film festivals, I'm so confused because I feel like there's the laurel collecting school of approach, and then there's the go for broke and apply to the huge one, and then obviously we only have a finite amount of time and money. So I just really appreciate what your approaches are to film festivals, how many, which ones, what makes the connection, the networking all worth it.
I do not ever apply to an online festival that tells you their IMDb qualifiers. All those are nonsense. They're not giving you any value, and there's so many. If you go on Film Freeway, you have so many of them that are.
So many.
And I'm not talking about film the ones that had to be virtual because of the pandemic. I'm talking about the ones that are they're online only, and they claim to be in various cities, and they claim to be all those things, and their only so-called value is to say that you're kind of guaranteed to get an award there, you're kind of guaranteed to, but those are, you can't arrive to an investor with those and then taking them seriously. So big festivals that are relevant to your genre, obviously we have a great luck in horror that it's every year there's a list of the top 50 horror festivals.
Who creates that list, by the way?
Movie makers.
So that's what I was going to say. There are 6,000 film festivals in the world. It's a ridiculous number of film festivals. So you have to go to a source that vets that for you. Go to Movie Maker's list. We've done it for 15 years, I think. Top 50 festivals worth the entry fee. If you go to one of those festivals, they're not going to rip you off. They're legitimate festivals. The reason you go to most film festivals is what we're doing right here today. It's networking. That's really the reason. Most festivals, you're not going to go get a distribution deal like in the old days. People used to hope for, buyers don't go anymore, right? I mean, well, some exceptions.
Well, Sundance.
So there's a top tier film festivals. There's Cannes, there's Toronto, there's Venice, there's Berlin. There's like 5 or 6, and then there's a whole sub-genre, sub-strata of film festivals. Yeah. And a lot of those they kind of live in that that area where they're not in Los Angeles or New York, but they're around CineQuest San Jose is a great one because it's a festival you can get into with your movie. But they still get media up there because it's just a couple hours from Los Angeles. So a lot of movie maker production services, feature filmmakers have premiered at CineQuest.
But knowing
Because
the
they can
genre,
to get distribution.
but knowing the genre also means that you're going out because you're meeting people. So for example, the Female Light Film Festival in Toronto, that you're going to meet other like-minded people. You're going to meet women that are writing, women that are producing, women that are acting, so you're building your tribe in another genre. So again, that may not be in the top 50 list, but at these festivals, you're using making relationships to become lifelong relationships. So,
And there's a
so I
whole
think know your
panel,
genre and the people that are there.
there's a whole panel on distribution that's next. So I don't want to steal too much thunder from
One
that,
more thing I'll say.
really quick.
It's a very important thing.
Yeah.
And it's just, having 100 laurels, nobody cares.
Right.
It looks bad, it crumbles, you crowds your poster. Having 5 good laurels, that's cool. You know what matters? Reviews. Get people to say nice things about your movie and put that on top of your film. When Conductor toured, when I removed the laurels and I put the reviews because I had gruesome yet awesome from Dread Central. 6 minutes later, I'm gulping at my screen, screaming holy shit. I put that on my because that's. I need to make it one like on with Sound of Violence. Somebody says I should be on a terror watch list. I need to make a post.
Let's move on.
What you're talking about is.
Let's move on with, I'm sorry. We have
Can I just interject? What you're talking about is quotes. Now, it's really hard to get reviews. You know, but to get a quote is almost as good. Get a quote from a friend who's a filmmaker who's made something before. People don't care. Was it a quote from a movie maker or was it a quote from my buddy, who made a feature film that everybody heard of? Get quotes are important.
And Sundance or bust is not a plan. Like, too many filmmakers think that it's reverse engineering and finding your community. See what the films the year before that you liked and enjoyed. What festivals did they play? Horror has a great sub-community. Bentonville Film Festival, great for women and underrepresented people. So it's finding, don't recreate the wheel.
That's where we're leading distribution, so we have something to talk about next hour. Melissa.
Hi, Melissa Goslin, writer director from Moderator. So as a first-time filmmaker, I've been a writer for a long time. I write articles, so it's longer than it's very different as a filmmaker. But I'm a huge question about actually from a short film into a feature. Is there, to move into that feature world, is there a benefit, is there anything we should know, to actually take our short film and work on that versus to pivot and do a totally different script for our first feature? Is there a benefit to taking that short into it or starting with
There was a filmmaker here, he just left. I don't know where he went. Too bad he's not here because he met with me yesterday.
Mark,
Yeah, exactly.
Shreveport Sun.
Thank you. Exactly, Shreveport Sun. So we were talking about this exact subject yesterday. He's going to go on to make another film with the same characters. That to me is brilliant because he's going to edit that all into a feature. That he might do that. I think that's a really interesting way to go because you're basically breaking down your feature into shorts.
And our creative industry isn't that creative. So you've given people something to see. It's a proof of concept. So if you're not using the short as a proof of concept, at least if it's tonally consistent. If you're doing a comedy, it's great. If this person made me laugh, they're good at their craft. So I think if not those same characters, at least tonally, like the same genre would be a good idea because now it's not just words on a page. They can watch a short in 3 minutes and 15 minutes and hopefully not longer.
The journey of the characters needs to be valuable.
Yeah.
And can you stretch that out? Are you going to then investigate instead of, particularly in the case of your film, are you going to investigate the one woman? Or are you going to investigate a number of the women's lives? And how then is that mom journey different for all of them? Well, now you can expand that into a feature. We weren't really focusing on the one mom, but multiple moms. It just needs to be interesting enough. Just because you make a short doesn't mean it should be a feature. It can be if you understand exploration of character, which they did talk about earlier. Because it will just be an uninteresting 90 minutes if you keep doing the same thing over and over.
And break the rule. Frankly, so with I'm going to just use conductor to sound of violence. The story of conductor is not in sound of violence. The character of Alexis, who's very lucid and short, is the core of my story in sound of violence. The reason why I didn't transfer it directly, story-wise, is because that didn't work. That's the delivery that worked in 6 minutes didn't work in 90 minutes. So it's actually important to understand the parts of your script, the character, and just to be like, okay, how do I extract the essence of it and put that essence on a blank page and start again.
Oh, and I'm working on a trilogy of films, and I start out with the one young girl at 8 years old, and then we fast forward to 13. So it's still the same character, but it's a whole different story that we're investigating at a different time in her life. So it just needs to be very specific.
Awesome. And I apologize, we're going to have to leave it there for time, but all these folks are available around the festival. Please find them, they're wearing the blue badges. Let's give a round of applause for our